When Sebastian Vettel retired from Formula One in 2022, he did so as one of the most beloved drivers in the sport's history. Fans loved him, team bosses loved him, and even his rival drivers loved him, with fellow veteran Fernando Alonso promising not to attack him too aggressively in the German's final race of the career. But the image of Vettel has not always been so kind, and when he actually started out, he was portrayed as almost the villain of the sport. So how did Vettel evolve as he grew up in Formula One? Sebastian Vettel may seem like he has been on the grid forever, and no doubt the first race of 2023 will be an odd sight not to see the recognizable number 5 lining up. But his start in Formula One came all the way back in 2006. Having impressed in karting and Formula 3, Vettel earned a test driver spot at BMW Sauber. And in 2006, when Robert Kubica suffered a crash the following year, the young German found himself lining up on the grid. In his first race, he would go on to finish in the points, becoming the then youngest driver to both start a race and to score points. 2 records he would hold until a certain Max Verstappen appeared. It may have been a P8, but his debut performance was enough to turn heads, as the world wondered if this was the next great German to follow in Michael Schumacher's footsteps. Kubica would return for the next race in France, but it was not long before Vettel had found himself with a full-time seat and joining a team that would go on to shape his future. Red Bull was still a relatively new team on the grid back during Vettel's early days, but when the team's junior outfit Toro Rosso came calling, the German had an easy choice to make. He jumped ship, swapping a third driver role to become the main man, and finished the 2007 season by racing in the final 7 races, including a P4 in China. A year later, he made history again when he became the youngest race winner in F1 history, with victory at the Italian Grand Prix. A record that he held until, you guessed it, Verstappen broke it in 2016. But by now, Formula One fans were getting to know the future 4-time world champion. The boy racer was cheerful, funny, and radiated an infectious enthusiasm for the sport. Off the grid, he went against the typical German mold by being into his comedy, especially British series such as Monty Python, and he became known as one of the happiest members of the grid.
I'm happy. We got one happy driver here at least.
But beneath his happy demeanor was a pure racer, and soon that profound self-belief in his ability to win would make him the enemy in some people's eyes. Vettel progressed his way up. perhaps even what country they come from, they will have a different memory of what Vettel was like during these dominant years. To the neutral, he was a ruthless winner, who combined an incredible eye for detail with a willingness to be bold in order to win race after race. To those who supported others, namely Lewis Hamilton, he was the main villain. A ruthless, dispassionate winner who was preventing the Hamilton fairy tale story from continuing. The Multi-21 incident was perhaps the time that even his most die-hard supporters looked at Vettel a little differently, as he defied team orders to overtake Webber. The most notable moment in their strained relationship. Vettel's legacy was defined during this Red Bull period, and he was the ultimate Marmite figure in the sport, but what no one could deny was his talent. Having achieved all he could at Red Bull, Vettel found his next career move soon came calling. The German had made no secret of his idolization of Schumacher, so when he had the chance to follow his hero's footsteps and join the famous Italian team Ferrari, he jumped at the chance. In the early years in the iconic red, Vettel kept up the form that had won him all of those titles, but his move to Ferrari coincided with the rise of Mercedes and their stranglehold on both titles. Vettel may have finished third in his first season, but at Ferrari, anything but a first was a failure. Soon, for the first time in his career, Vettel found himself no longer the favourite son. Charles Leclerc had appeared on the scene, and with a CV of incredible talent and a Monaco upbringing, it seemed he had been born to be a Ferrari driver. This left Vettel in an awkward spot, who had become an increasingly frustrated figure within the paddock. The team's form was failing, but despite their rivalry, Vettel never fell out with Leclerc and began to show the kind of leadership qualities that personified his later career. Ferrari and Vettel's relationship was soon beyond repair, so much so that Vettel considered retirement at the age of 32. But away from the title fight, the German was given an opportunity to reinvent himself at Aston Martin. The Ferrari experience changed Vettel. His whole career up until then had been on an upward trajectory, with achievement after achievement following record after record. Ferrari saw him stagnate, but a move away from the spotlight allowed him to focus on other areas that were important to him. Whether it was the freedom of being out of Ferrari, the impact having children had on him, or even just his advance in age, Vettel became one of the most outspoken drivers on the grid, almost unrecognizable from the man fans had seen develop a decade previously. Climate change, equal rights, the LGBTQ+ community, Vettel became an ally to them all and was not afraid to ruffle a few feathers if he believed in what he was saying. It was not just those on the outside of F1 either who received the support of Vettel. As Michael had done to Vettel all those years earlier, Vettel became a father figure to Mick Schumacher, helping to guide him as he made the difficult entry into Formula One. Their relationship became a highlight on the grid, with the two being genuine friends, as well as opponents. Vettel also spoke out in favour of driver safety, often being the lead voice in controversial circumstances such as the Saudi Arabia missile attack of 2022. The leadership, the friendship, the compassion for his fellow drivers, all of this reshaped how the world saw Sebastian Vettel. He appeared on TV programs arguing for more to be done in climate change. He arranged for women to drive cars in countries where up until very recently it was banned. And he set up bee farms to encourage the rise in the important insect population. He may not have been battling as high up on the grid as he once did, but even if he did show glimpses of his magic while at Aston Martin, it almost did not matter. Vettel had seemingly elevated himself above the sport and was no longer a typical driver. He had become the elder statesman, the voice of reason in an increasingly morally questionable world, and fans, drivers, and teams loved him for it. When Vettel announced his upcoming retirement midway through the 2022 season, the news was met with sadness, but also an appreciation of what he had achieved both on and off the grid. The evolution of Vettel, not only as a driver but also as a human, is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of F1. So as he prepares for the first season watching at home in a long time, he will do so knowing he left the sport in a better place than he found it. Thanks for watching and learning about the one and only Sebastian Vettel. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss a video, and check out our other videos to learn about some of the legendary figures and stories of Formula One.